Hello, welcome to Mix and Met with free plugins, and I'm going to show you my mix of L'Enfant Sauvage. Okay, I'm going to jump straight in with the drums. So I'm going to stress all these plugins are completely free. They're not just free for a trial period or free for an offer. This is free for live plugins. So the first one is SSD5. You can get SSD5 free, where Steven Slate gives you just one of his kits. So this is the kick drum. So this is their first kick that they give us. So for that, I've just added a bit of energy with some compression, slow attack, fast release, and an EQ to boost a bit of low, cut out some of the mud, and then add some really high frequencies there as well. Second one is a kick out or a sub kick. Not really doing too much with that one. And the final one is a kick sample. This is a free sample that I found online, a metal kick drum sample. Sounds like this. So that's my one shot. So if I blend all these together, it gives you quite a big sound. Moving on to the snare drum. So again, you get two snare drum samples with the SSD kit. You get their snare, which is a highly tuned, almost sounds like a piccolo snare, and you get one of Steven Slate's samples, one-shot samples. So this is the direct snare drum. So I've not done too much for this. I've not added any compression or EQ. I've left it as it is. This is the one shot. So with this one, I've added some compression. So I've got quite a harsh ratio. In fact, it's pretty much a limiter. Really slow attack, really fast release, a low threshold. And what that does is it allows the initial tack of the snare drum to jump through the compressor. And then the compressor starts to work on the final part of the transient, or almost the room sound or the decay. So it brings that up and makes it a bit louder, gives it a bit of energy. The last one is a snare bottom, and it's in the same compression on it to make it pop for a bit more, and a really extreme EQ. So I'm only using this bottom snare for is to add what might be missing from the snare top sound. So it's a lot of high end and a bit of body, a bit of low end on that. So blend all of them together and you get something like this. Okay, there's a lot of energy in those samples. And the last thing I've done in the chain is just, again, another compressor, slow attack, fast release, but a slightly easier threshold, but a really harsh ratio, essentially a limiter at the moment. And a plugin called Transient. This one's by Audio Assault. They do a paid for version now, but this version was released completely for free. The toms just got some compression on, because again, these samples already have some mixing on them. I've not done too much for the ride other than turn it up by quite a bit. The overheads, I've just compressed them and add an EQ to get rid of some low end. The rooms, however, these are quite important, especially with this kind of sound. If you listen to the original mix of L'Enfant Sauvage, you can hear like a really nice room decay sample. So to try and emulate that with this plugin, is I've put huge amounts of compression on this room sound. So you can really hear the decay of the snare drum. If I put these 4 tracks together, you can hear that snare drum decay. It's almost a bit like a reverb, but I tend to find this sounds much better than putting reverb on drums. There is a second room sound as well. And again, I've just compressed that. I've bussed the kick, snare, and tom bus, as well as the room sounds, to a parallel channel. So this parallel channel is adding a lot of compression, as you can see. Really harsh threshold, harsh ratio. The attack's slow, so it lets a lot of that initial transient through, and then a really quick release just to give it as much energy as possible. I've put the room sounds in, but I've mixed these a bit lower because you get a bit too much cymbal wash when you do this technique with those. So this is what the drums sound like all together. Moving on to the bass, we've got 2 bass sounds. So they are the same DI, I've just duplicated them and processed them differently. Really important thing to stress with bass guitar is the energy needs to be in the DI. So if I play the DI on its own, You can already hear lots of pick attack and lots of energy in this bass. As long as you've got that to start with, you can mix it a lot more easily. So with the compression for the bass, what I've done is I've just simple stock compression, but I've pulled down the threshold just to make sure the low end is really consistent, or as consistent as I can get it. I've then EQ'd, just add a bit of bottom end, cut out some mud from the middle, and just add a little bit more top end, or a little bit more snap from the strings onto that signal. That'll help it blend in with this next signal. So this next signal is a free plugin from TSE. It's BOD. It's essentially a Sans amp, which is a really, really popular plugin in its own right. In fact, if I was using this on its own, I could probably get a pretty good bass sound. Because I'm using it in tandem with this one, I've added an EQ, which just cuts out a bit of the low end, which creates a bit of space at the bottom, and it allows this more compressed bass channel to occupy that space. Done a high cut as well to make sure that there's going to be like no sizzle or no like extra harshness in there. So I'm going to put these two together and see what they sound like. There's one more thing going on. I've got two instances of this Brainworks subfilter going on. So this is a bit like a harmonic generator. So it will take part of the signal and just add harmonics wherever you set it to go. So I've set it at about 80 Hertz. It's slightly above the fundamental frequency of B, which is the key of this piece. But I've put extreme harmonics and I've really pushed this to almost the limit. It adds quite a nice bit of low end in there, and it's really controlled as well. I've then put another one on the bus of the whole thing, and that's again 80 Hertz, but a little bit less on there. So it's just to give, it's almost replicating what you might get from an R-bass plugin from Waves. And the last one is the guitars. Now I can't show you this in Pro Tools because the plugin doesn't exist in Pro Tools yet. However, I've taken the DIs. Again, same as the bass, we need to make sure the DIs are really high quality. So I pushed this into my preamp with the gain as low as it can possibly go. And I was still getting a tiny bit of clipping on some of the harder notes. Now going into an amp sim, that wasn't a problem. However, if you were recording this properly, you'd probably want a DI box with a pad if you're going to put that much energy into the signal. So this is a brand new plugin. It's a Fluff signature plugin. It's completely free for life. Okay, this is based off an EVH amp and it's been molded extremely well. You've got a drive pedal, you've got a gate, and obviously you've got the third channel of an EVH, and it sounds incredible. This doesn't need any extra process input after it at all. So I bounced this out of Logic because it doesn't exist in Pro Tools yet, and I've just brought that render in, and this is what it sounds like. So as you can hear, there's a lot of mid-range in that signal, and it's really cutting through the mix well. So let's put all the signals together, and this is what you get. And there you have it. This is what you can do with 100% free plugins and just stock plugins that you get in your DAW. In conclusion, it's amazing to hear what you can do with all these free plugins. I'm going to put all the links in the description below, and it'd be really awesome to see what you can do with these free stuff.